Hello everybody and welcome to my tutorial. So today I'm going to be showing you how to make this couch cushion material. The first thing you want to do is you're going to want to open up a new package. So you can do that by just going up to File, New Package, Substance Graph, and then you're going to want to choose Metallic Roughness, and then you can just fill in whatever you want to name the graph. And then I'm going to be working at 20 by 48 by 2048 and 16 bits per channel. So once you have that, then you can start by adding in a shape node. So I like to just search in this left-hand search bar, but you can also find nodes by right-clicking and go Add Node, and you'll see like a list of them up here. And they're also up here at the top. I'm just in the habit of finding them in the in the search bar because not everything is going to be in the Add Node from right-clicking, and yeah, I'm just in the habit of doing it that way. But you can do it however way you want. First thing, we add in our shape node, and then we're just going to want to go to the side here, and we're going to do tiling 1. Our pattern that we're going to choose is going to be our pyramid, and then we're going to have it scale X and Y both at 1. Okay, so the next we're going to do a blur HQ grayscale. Here we go, and just attach that in there, and then we're going to set the intensity to 16. Just crank that up, and then we're going to crank the quality up to 1 as well. We're going to grab a tile generator, this guy here. And let's see, so we're going to set the X and Y amount both to 2. Oops, 2. And then for our pattern, we're going to choose image input. For our scale, down here, we're going to set that to 0.73. And for our pattern rotation, we're going to set this to 0.125. There we go. Okay, oh, and we should probably plug that in as well. There you go. Next, we're going to grab another tile generator. And actually, we could just copy and paste this one. So Control C, Control V. And then the only thing that we're going to change in this one for our global offset, we're just going to change it to 0.25 for both the X and the Y. There we go. So you basically just want to have like a reversed image of both of these guys. Okay. So then next we're going to grab a blend node, which is this guy here. And then we're just going to plug each one into the top and the bottom. Then for the blend mode, we're going to make this add linear. Then we're going to want to grab a histogram range. And we're going to want to set the range to 1. And then the position to 0.29. There we go. And then we'll just grab a distance node. And just plug that into the top with the mask input. And then we're going to set the maximum distance to 86.79. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to want to add a little bit of like roundness to kind of make this diamond pattern look kind of more like a round couch cushion and kind of give it that kind of plushness. So we want to go and do a histogram scan. Not here. And we're going to grab the distance and put that into the input. And then we're going to set the position to 0.71. And the contrast we'll leave at 0. Then we're going to grab a Blur HQ Grayscale. And just plug that in. Then we're going to set the intensity to 8.73. And we're going to turn the quality all the way up to 1. Then we're going to grab another Blur HQ Grayscale. And we're going to plug the histogram scan into the input, the grayscale input there. And we're going to set the intensity for this one to 6.89. And then again, we're going to want to turn the quality all the way up to 1. So next we'll grab a shadows node. And for the input, we're going to grab the distance from the top here, and we're going to plug that into the height. Then here, we're going to turn the shadow distance up to 1. The light angle is going to be 0.5. Edge softness, we can leave at 1. And samples, we're going to turn all the way up to 16. Then we're going to grab a bevel node. And again, we're going to plug in the distance. And then we're going to turn the distance here up to 0.48. I mean, 0.5 is pretty close, but she's 0.48. Then and I think everything else here. Oh no, we're going to want to turn the normal intensity all the way up to 50. And then we're going to grab a blend node. And in the foreground here, we're going to want to plug the bevel node. And then in the background, we're going to grab this shadows node. And then for the mode, we're going to set this to min darken. And then we're going to set the opacity to 0.62. Alright, then we're going to want to grab one more blend node. Just grab it from up here. And in the foreground, we're just going to plug this first blend node in. In the background, we're going to grab this Blur HQ Grayscale. Wait, no, sorry, this Blur HQ Grayscale, the second one that we made here. And then we're going to want to set this to multiply. So we'll just pull this back a little bit. And at this point, we can probably just start plugging it into some of our inputs just so we can kind of see on this, our 3D square, how it's looking. So usually I like to grab a base material, this guy here, just because I find it's a little bit easier for like keeping things like organized and also for exporting. So for now, we're just going to click our height, our ambient occlusion, our normal, and then we could do our base color as well, just kind of like help us see a little bit better what we're doing. So we're going to grab this guy, we're going to plug it into our ambient occlusion, our height, base color. Wait, no, we need a gradient map for that. We'll plug that to our base color. I'm going to grab our normal node from up here. Just plug that in there. And then back here, I'm just going to plug into our base color, our normal, wait, no, not the roughness, our height. Why isn't that showing up? And our ambient occlusion. There we go. Actually, I made a little mistake here. So right here, I have the blur HQ grayscale. I have the histogram scan plugged into the grayscale input. Actually, what we want to do is we want to grab the distance and plug that in there instead. Next, we're going to want to do kind of create that that leather kind of pattern that we have overlaid on top of it. So we're going to do that by grabbing a stripes node. Just going to put that there. And then we're going to set that to 12. Then we're going to set the width to 1. The softness to 0.51. The shift to 10. And we're going to align it to the center. Then we're going to grab a transformation 2D node. And we're just going to plug that in. And we're just going to hit this horizontal mirror. Okay. Then we're going to grab a cells node. And we're going to use this cells 3. And that one, we're going to keep the scale at 32. And we're going to set the hardness to 1. And then we're going to set the disorder to 0.4. Then we want to grab a non-uniform directional warp. It's this guy here. And we're going to plug these cells into the input. And then for the intensity input and the warp angle input, we're going to plug in our transformation 2D. Then here, we're going to set the intensity to 4.52. Oops. Then we're going to set the warp angle to 0.27. And for the warp angle input multiplier, we're going to set that to 0.59. And then for all the trail length, the trail fade, and the trail curve, we're going to set all of those to 1. Okay, so it should look a little bit like that. Next, we're going to grab a edge detect. Plug that in, and we're going to set the edge width to 1. We'll set the edge roundness to 1.5, and then tolerance we'll keep it 0. Okay, so next we're going to grab a flood fill. We're going to grab a flood fill to B-box size. After you have the flood fill to B-box size, we're going to want to grab a bevel. Oops. And for the input here, actually, can maybe move that up here. We just want to have the edge detect. So for the distance, we're going to set this to 0.1 or minus 0.1. So for the corner type, we're going to have round. Smoothing is at 0, and then normal intensity, we're going to set that to 10. Okay, so we're good here. Okay. Then we want to grab a shadows. And plug that in there. And so we're going to set the shadow distance to 0.18. Then we can change the light angle to 0.59. Edge softness is going to be 0.78. And we're going to set the samples. We're going to keep the samples at 8. Okay. Then next we're going to grab a blend node. And we're going to plug the foreground. We're going to grab the distance node here. And the background, we're going to grab the shadows. And we're going to set the blend mode to min darken. And we're going to set the opacity to 0.2. Now what we want to do is we want to grab a distance. And we want to plug the mask, the edge detect here into the mask. And then we're going to set the, and then for our source input, we're also going to want to do our flood filter B-box size. Then we're going to set our distance to 8.19. And then we're actually going to plug this in. Actually, we have the wrong distance plugged in. We're going to want to plug that one in there. There we go. So then next we're going to grab an invert grayscale. And just plug that in there. Transformation 2D. And then we're going to hit this underneath stretch. We're going to hit the /2 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so then we're going to grab a levels. And we're just going to grab this middle gray guy. And we're just going to pull it slightly to the left, like that. And then we're just going to grab another invert grayscale. There we go. Oh, and one more thing. We're going to want to make sure that here on our edge detect, we're going to want to make sure that we hit invert, so it's true. Next thing we're probably going to want to do is we're going to want to organize this a little bit, just to keep everything, I guess, organized. Otherwise it could kind of become like a bit of a tangled mess. So let's just take these guys here, and we're just gonna select all of these, right click and add frame. And then right here, I'm just going to call this cushion. Actually, you can probably put these guys up here as well. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to start working on our button. So we're going to add in a shape node. And for this one, we're going to set our pattern to disk. And the scale is going to be 0.72. Then we're going to add in a distance node. And we're just going to plug that into our mask input. And we're going to set the max distance to 30.57. Then we're going to want to add in another shape node. And we're going to set this one to hemisphere. And we're going to set the scale to 0.98. And you don't want to set this all the way to 1, just because the edges of this circle here are going to get a little bit too close to the borders, and you're going to end up with some weird clipping. So it's good to make it just like a couple points below 1. Then we're going to want to grab a blend node. And then we're going to put the distance as the foreground. And the background, we're going to put the second shape node. Oh, and then we're also going to want to have the distance plugged into the opacity here. Then we're going to set this to subtract, and we're going to put the opacity down to 0.31. There we go. So then after that, we want to grab a curve node, and we're just going to plug that into, or have the blend be our input here. And then for this curve node, we're going to want to create kind of an odd shape. So I'm just going to double click somewhere around here, and we're going to, no. Okay, so we're just going to want to double click here. And around here. And we're just going to want it to be like, oops, on like a sharp angle like that. There you go. Keep this guy maybe around here. This guy maybe around there. And then you're just going to want to double click it one more time and create just kind of like a smooth curve like so. Oops, kind of like that. Yeah, I think that's probably okay. All right, then we're going to grab a levels. Oops, and we're going to plug that into our curve. And we're going to take this white arrow here, and we're just going to pull it to roughly around the center. Like that. It's probably okay. Maybe a little more. Okay. Then we're going to grab another blend node. And for this one, we're going to have the foreground going to come from this distance over here. And the background is going to be our levels. And we're going to set this to subtract. And we're going to pull the opacity down to 0.1. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to need to put some little like buttonholes for our thread. So we're going to do that by grabbing another shape node. And we're going to set this to disk. And then we're going to set the scale to 0.05. And then we're going to grab another distance node. And we'll have our shape be our input. And we're going to set the max distance to 10. Then we're going to grab another curve node. And we're going to plug the distance into our input. So for this curve, we want to... Oops. Alright, so we want to grab this one here, the side, and we want to pull it to... Oops, pull that out a little bit. To maybe around a third-ish. And then we're going to grab this top corner here. We're going to pull it all the way to the other side. Or wait, no, yeah, okay, we have to go up this way. And this is going to go down this side here. To about there or so. Then with this one, got these little handles, just want to pull them out. And you're going to want, pull this down a little bit, and you're going to want one side to be straight, like that. And you're going to want it to be pretty much vertical with the bottom. And then you're going to want to pull this handle out. Like that, roughly. There we go. So it should look something like that. And basically, you just want like the center of your circle to be black, and you're kind of masking that out for yourself. So then we're going to grab a mirror grayscale. Pull that here. And we're going to plug curve into that. And we're going to mirror this on the x-axis, and then set that to 0.65. Perfect. So now we're going to want to center this a little bit. So we're going to grab a 2D transform node. And we're going to set the X and Y offset. So for the X, you're going to set it to 0.16. And for the Y, you're going to set it to minus 0.01. There we go. Then you're going to want to grab another blend node. And we're going to put our transformation 2D into the foreground. And from the background, we're going to want to plug in this blend. And then we're going to set this to multiply. There we go. All right, so it's starting to look like a button. But we're also going to need some thread. So to do that, we're going to add a fibers node. And then we're going to add another transformation 2D. We'll plug the fibers into that. And then we're going to set the, right, okay, so we're going to want to go to the top to where it says tiling mode and set it to absolute. And then you want it to only be horizontal tiling. And then we're going to do this little /2 underneath stretch, and we're going to hit it 3 times. And then we're going to set the offset to X, we'll keep it 0, and then Y, we're going to set it to 0.07. There we go. All right, so we're going to grab another shape node. And we're going to set this one to capsule. And we're going to want to change the shape of it or elongate it a little bit by setting our pattern specific to 0.41. The reason why you want to do the pattern specific here is it's going to actually just like elongate the center, like so. If you were to do it along like the X or the Y, it's going to kind of, it doesn't really show here, but it's going to actually like elongate the edges of it as well. So it's going to kind of give it kind of like a weird, more of like a pointy shape, and we don't want that. All right, so from there, we're going to grab a transformation 2D and hook that up. And we're going to set the offset for the X and the Y just to 0.01 for both of them. Okay. Then we're going to want to grab another blend node. And we're going to put the foreground, we're going to have the this transformation 2D be the foreground, and then the fibers be the background. And we're going to set that to multiply. Okay. Then we're going to grab a histogram scan. And we're going to set the position to 0.52. And the contrast, we're going to turn all the way up to 1. Then we're going to grab another blend node, and we're going to have the foreground be, oops, no, so the foreground is going to be this blend here, and then the background is going to be the histogram scan. And then we're going to make this multiply. Okay. Let's see here. Actually, yeah, set it to 0.5. 0.52 had that weird little like nub on the end there, and I don't like that. Okay, so next we're going to have a mirror. So we're going to grab this mirror grayscale. And we're going to plug our blend into that. And we want to mirror axis Y. And we're going to make the offset 0.488. 0.485. There we go. Yeah. So then now we're going to grab another levels. We're going to plug our mirror into the input there. And then we're just going to want to pull this bottom white one about 1/3 of the way to the left. Maybe just like a tiny bit over, like that. Yeah, I think that's about right. Then we're going to grab a histogram scan. And we're going to make the position 0.52. Oops, 0.52. And the contrast we're going to put at 1. Ooh. That's not good. Okay. Let's change that to... Let's see. Oops. Maybe like 6.5. Okay, so yeah, so turn the position all the way up to 1 and then the contrast all the way up to 1 as well. I think we might have to go back and adjust that later, but for now it should be fine. One thing actually, so this shape here, actually we're going to want to set this to 0.05 because the way it is, or no, sorry, 0.5. 0.5. Okay. Because the way it is now, it's going to actually be too long and too narrow for this button. It's going to look kind of weird. So there you go. So that's going to be a little bit better. And then from there, we'll actually want to probably pull this mirror back to about, oops, 0.488. There we go. And then put this back up to 5.2. There we go. And then maybe put this back to 5.2 as well. Ooh, no, okay, maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, that's probably good. Just leave it at 1. Okay, so we can grab these guys here, and then we can probably just group them roughly together. Just keep things a little bit less chaotic. So put a frame around here. We're going to call this buttons. And then put a frame around here. We'll call this thread. Oops, nope, we're still on buttons. Add frame and thread. There we go. Okay, so from here, we're probably going to want to, in order to build all this, we're going to need to add some tiling, and we're going to need to have some masks. That way we can kind of layer the buttons on top of the thread. So the first thing, we're going to grab a tile generator. There we go. And we're going to plug our button into the top there. And we're going to want to make this for our X amount. We're going to set this to 2. And for the Y amount, it's going to be 2. And for our pattern, we're going to do image input. There we go. Okay, and so for our scale, we're going to set this to 0.23. And for our offset position, we're going to set this to 0.55. And then we're going to have our offset random, and that's going to be 1.15. Okay. Then we're going to go down to our global offset, and we're going to set this to, for our X, we're going to set it to 0.25. And for the Y, we're just going to leave that at 0. Okay, then we're going to have our rotation. We're going to set it to, for turns, we're just going to put it at like 0.361. Okay. And for blend mode, we'll keep it at add. Perfect. Okay, so then we're going to want to grab another tile generator. And a lot of what we put in is going to be similar, but a few things will be different. So it's going to be the same. We're going to have both of these at 2. And of course, we're going to want to have our image input. Our rotation random, we're going to set this to 0.47. And our scale is going to be at 0.23. Then we're going to have our global offset. For our X, it's going to be 0. For the Y, it's going to be 0.75. And for our rotation, it's going to be 0.189. And the rotation random, we're going to put that at 0.6. Okay. So then from there, we're going to grab a blend node. And we're just going to plug one into the top and one into the bottom. It doesn't really matter which one. And then we're just going to have our blend mode be add. Now we're going to add a blur HQ grayscale. Just because sometimes when, I don't know, I find that like when it displays, like it's good to kind of like, you know, just blur it out a little bit because it just kind of helps it not be quite as pixelated. So we'll add that in there. We're going to set the intensity to 0.2. And our quality, we're going to turn that all the way up to 1. There we go. Then we're going to want to grab a histogram range. And we're going to set the range up to 1. And the position is going to be 0.2. There we go. We're going to grab a histogram scan now. And we're going to have the input be this guy here, the transformation 2D for our our buttonholes. And we're going to set the position up to 1. No. More like that. One's a little too far. And contrast is going to go all the way up. There we go. 0.99 works. Okay. Then we're going to grab a shape. And we're going to make the pattern a disc. And we're going to set the scale to 0.98. There we go. It's going to be the same as what we set this shape up here. So we're just going to be masking this out. Actually, yeah, cool. Then we're going to grab a blend node. And we're going to have the foreground be our shape. And the background is going to be our histogram scan. And then we're just going to set that to multiply. There we go. All right, and so we're going to want to make a tile for this as well. So we can actually just grab these that we just made and Control C and Control V. Just paste that. And then just replace these two guys here because we're going to want the parameters to be exactly the same because this is basically just a mask for a button. Okay. So then we're going to grab a believe another blend node. So we're going to grab our histogram range. And then we are going to plug that into our foreground. And then our background, we're going to want to add in a invert grayscale. And we're going to plug our blend into that. And then we're going to plug the other side of that into the background of our blend. For a blend here, we're going to want to make this add. There we go. Next, we're going to grab our tile generators. So we're actually just going to do this again. So grab these guys. And we're going to plug our thread into these. Then we're going to grab a histogram scan and plug our blend in there. And we're going to set our position to 0. But our contrast is going to be 0. Okay. And grab a blur. And we're going to set the intensity to 0.2. And then we're going to set the quality all the way up to 1. There we go. grab an invert grayscale. Oh, and our input is going to be this guy. Okay. Okay. Then, all right, so now we're going to grab a gradient linear 2. And this is going to be for our height map, just so that like when the thread like goes over the button, it's gonna give it kind of like a roundness, so it doesn't just look like a weird flat line of thread. It's gonna give it just like a little bit more dimension. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna flip it 90 degrees. Then we're gonna grab transformation 2D. We're going to grab a we're going to have to grab a blend node to do this. So we're going to put that at the top, and then we're going to grab this guy here, right at the bottom, and we're going to probably, doesn't really matter which one you use, you just kind of want it to be transparent enough to be able to see it. But we are going to set, all right, so we are going to set the offset to 0.04. And then the Y we're going to set to minus 0.08. So we want it to be off-centered just a little bit. Or actually, we're probably going to have to change that again. Hold on. Oh, I see. So we're going to want to set this to absolute, and then no tiling. There we go. Okay, that's not going to work. So we'll change that to maybe multiply will work? No. Let's see. Maybe screen. And actually what we can do is just turn the opacity down. Because we're just using this as a guide, we're going to delete this blend node after. We just kind of want to see where it should be going. Have it just go over the edge just a tiny bit. There we go. That and like that. And then we're probably going to want to set our offset again. So 0.04. Or, no, I guess it doesn't really matter. We can just leave it that way. Okay, so we can just delete this blend node now. Now that we have this positioned where we want it to be. All right, so then we're going to grab our two tile generators and our blend node again. And we're just going to Control C and Control V, put that down there, and then just plug our transformation into these guys. All right, so we have them all properly oriented. One more thing we're actually going to want to do is we're going to want to make some tiling for this this mask that we made. So we'll move that up. And actually what we can do is we can just copy paste that again. And we'll leave that there. And then we're going to plug these, our histogram scam mask, into the old tile generators. And I think that should be, yeah, that's better. Okay, so now that we have all that, we could do a little bit of cleanup again, and just organize these or make a frame for them so we know what we're doing. So I'll just select all of those, and I'll add a frame, and we'll call this tiling masking. Boom, there we go. Now that we have all of our different like couch parts, we're going to want to start building it up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab a, well, we're going to probably start working on the normal first. So we're going to grab a blend node, and then we can actually just pull these back a little bit, same with this, because we're going to need a bit of room here. And so we're going to grab this blend node, and for the foreground, we're going to take our blur HQ grayscale from this first cushion part that we worked on, and we're going to plug that into our foreground. Then for the background, we're going to grab this other, this blend right here. And we're going to put that into our background. Okay, we can pull that a little closer. Same with these guys. Okay. Then for our opacity, or wait. Oh, no, actually we're going to want this this blur HQ grayscale. We're going to want to be our background. And then for our opacity, we're going to want that to be our, this blend node. There we go. Then for our mode, or blending mode, we're going to set that to soft light. There we go. Yeah. Okay, I think that's right. Okay. Then we're going to want to grab another blend node. And we're going to want to grab this levels from up here. And we're going to want to plug that into our foreground. Then for our background, I'm going to plug this blend node. Then we're going to set this to multiply. And then we want to set the opacity down all the way down to 0.01. There we go. So it looks like you can't really see it like at all, but it's going to show up in our normal. It's just very, very light, but we don't want it to be too strong. Okay, so then we're going to grab a normal, which I guess we can just use this one. And we're going to plug this into it. And then we're going to set our intensity to 25.15. So 25.15. There we go. So it's starting to show up a little bit there. And then we're going to grab another normal node. And we're going to plug this guy. So from our tiling and masking, we're going to grab our blend from our first tile generator. that we did for a button. And we're going to plug that in there. And then we're going to set this intensity to 6.67. Then we're going to grab one more normal node. And we're going to plug in our thread. Was that this one here? Yes, I believe it was. Yeah, it's the one we're not using yet. So it's the blending, not the mask, but just the tile from our thread. And we're just going to pull that up, and we're going to plug that into our normal here. And then for that one, we're going to set the intensity to 3. Then, so now we're going to go and we're going to grab a normal blend. There we go. And so for our normal front ground, we're going to grab the normal from our buttons. And the background, we're going to grab the normal from our couch cushion. And then from our mask, we're going to grab our button mask here. And we're going to plug that into our mask. Perfect. And then for our opacity, yeah, we're going to keep that at 1. So then we're going to grab another normal blend. And for the front ground, we're going to plug in our thread. And for the background, we're going to plug in the last normal blend. And then for our mask, we're just going to go down here and we're going to grab our mask from our tile generator. So that would be, I think, this guy here. Yeah. And yeah, I'm going to grab this guy. And just plug that in the back. Perfect. So then we're just going to grab this, and then we're just going to plug this into our, ooh, everything's pretty far away. Okay, maybe I gave myself a little too much space. Yeah, just pull that here for now. And just going to find our normal, and we're just going to plug it in there. Perfect. There we go. So now we have some nice buttons and a little bit of that leather material texture starting to come through. Now that we have our normal set up, here, let's make a frame for it just to keep, again, everything kind of like, you know, organized. So right click, add frame, and then we're just going to call this normal. There we go. Now we're going to set up our height. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make a blend node. There's going to be a lot of these, so get ready. So first thing, we're going to plug in into the foreground here. We're going to plug in our invert grayscale. And that's going to be from down, I believe it's going to be this one. No, sorry, it's going to be this one. So this is going to go into our foreground. And then our background is going to be this blend node, I believe. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. And we're going to be using this for both our height map and our AO. So I'm going to just kind of leave this like hovering in the abyss. Oh, right. And of course we want to set our blend mode to add. There we go. Okay, cool. So now we're going to add a distance node. I'm just going to search on the side here. Actually, it's up here as well, but I'm just in the habit of searching down here on the side. Okay, so I'm going to just probably leave this blend node probably just like around there, and then I'll move it somewhere like more convenient as we add more of our different sections. So for our input, this is going to be this is going to come from our histogram range over here. It's going to be this guy. So pull it all the way over here. There we go. And we're going to want to set the maximum distance to 137.55. 0.55. Awesome. Pull that out a bit. Then our next one, we're going to want to put in a histogram scan. Put that there. And our input is going to be our distance. We're going to set the position to 0.29. And then our contrast is going to be 0.49. There we go. Next, we're going to add a auto levels. And just plug the histogram scan into the grayscale input here. The next is going to be a blur HQ grayscale. Okay, and then we're just going to plug that in there, the auto levels into the blur HQ grayscale. We're going to set the intensity to 6.93. And then we're going to put the quality all the way up to 1. Then we're going to add a blend node. And the foreground is going to be the blur HQ grayscale. And then the background is going to be the blend node from all the way up here in our cushion section. And it's going to be... yeah, okay. So plug that into the background. And then we're going to set this to multiply. And then we're going to set the opacity to 0.54. Awesome. Next, it's going to be a histogram range. So search here. And we're going to plug the blend into the input. And then we're going to set the range to 0.35. And then the position to 0.35. And then we're going to set... no, sorry. Okay, cool. We're good with that. So we're going to grab another blend node. And we're going to for the foreground, we're going to grab this this blend node here of our like button mask. And put that in the foreground. And then the background is going to be the histogram range. There we go. And then we're going to set the blend mode to max lighten. The next one, we're going to want to add in a shadows node. And just put that there. And for the input for this one, we're going to want it to be this blend node here from our button tile. And just plug that in there. And then we're going to want to set our shadow distance to 1. Then set the light angle. Just set the degree to 46.79. Oh, okay, so it's already where we want it to be. Then set the edge softness to 0. And the samples all the way up to 16. Now, the next one we're going to do is a levels node. And for the input, it's going to be the shadows that we just did. And we're going to want to pull this like gray arrow to about, 1/4 of the ways across. So like just over like that little hashed area. Then we're going to want to add another levels node. Just pull this from here. And for our input, we're going to want it to be this blend node here from our tile masking with the white background. And then we're going to pull this arrow here about 2/3 of the way to the left. So something like that. Probably about, right? Maybe? No. Oops. Yeah, so something like... Yeah, that's probably good. We can always fix it later. Next one, we're going to want to add another blend node. And we're going to want the foreground, we're going to want to be one of these levels that we just did. This one is going to be the foreground. And then the background is going to be this guy. The first levels that we did. Then we're going to set the blending mode to multiply. I don't like that crunchy edge around the side, but alright, we'll come back to that if we need to. Okay, so then the next we're going to do is we're going to add another blend node. And the foreground is going to be this blend node that we just did here. And then the background is going to be this blend node. So for the blend node that we just did, we're going to set our blending mode to multiply again. Then we're going to add another blend node. And the foreground is going to be our Blur HQ grayscale from our thread mask back over here at our tiling masking section. So pull that all the way over here. And then the background is going to be the blend node that we just did. And we're going to set our mode, our blending mode, to max lighten. There we go. Okay. Now another blend node. So our foreground is going to be this blend node that we just did. No, sorry, it's not. It's going to be down here. This this tiling that we did for our blending our tile masking section. And I mentioned that we were going to make this this tile here for our height map, and this is where it's going to be used. So we're just going to plug that into the foreground. And then our background is going to be this guy up here, the first one, the first blend node that we made for our height map section. And I'm going to pull that all the way back here. Nope. Wait. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm confusing myself now. All right, and then we're going to set the blending mode to screen. And we're going to set the opacity to 0.4. Okay. So it's going to look like that. You can see. Cool. Now we're going to add yet another one last blend node. And we're going to plug in the blend node for our thread height that we just did here. And we're going to plug that into our foreground. And for our background, we're going to plug in this blend node here that we don't yet have plugged into anything, into the background. And then we're going to set this to min darken. Okay, so it should be looking something like that. And then we're going to take our output into our height. There we go. And yeah, let's just pull these back a bit. Oops. There we go. It might start getting a little chaotic. If you'd like, you can just click on these, you know, these wires, connectors, and just right-click on them and select Add Dot Node, and it's going to give you like one of these little like angle things, which you can use to like either like use as a connector to plug into like other nodes as you need them, and you can also just use it to give yourself like some angles so that it like feels a little bit less chaotic, and it kind of helps you like organize yourself. I don't always use them because I don't know, I'm just like kind of a messy person, and I also just I find that they don't always make things as clean and organized as like, you know, as I guess I would want them to, so I just don't really bother. But some people like really like them, and it just like it does kind of help them keep things organized. So if you find that like this big spaghetti monster is becoming just a little bit too overwhelming, then you do have the option to like add those in. So I'm going to add a frame now. So add frame, and I'm going to call this height. There we go. Now you might notice like on your 3D cube that we added the height, but it doesn't really look like there's any height. So the way that you can fix that is if you go to your material section here on your rounded cube 3D view. So go to materials, default, and then just go down to metallic roughness and select tessellation displacement. And then down here, then it's going to open up this this like kind of options panel, and go to your scale, and you can just select that and just pull that up, and then you'll actually be able to see your height and what's going on there. And if like you'll probably get these like weird little like crunchy, scratchy lines. If you just turn up your tessellation factor, that'll kind of like sort those out and just kind of like, you know, make the quality a little bit higher. But just know though that when you raise the tessellation factor, it is going to be more, I guess, like costly or more expensive for your computer to process. So I don't usually have those turned all the way up when I'm working, just because it's a little bit unnecessary. and it's a little, for my computer to just be like processing that all the time. I'll just do that just to kind of like see where, um, kind of just where I'm at and how, if what I'm doing is right. And then I'll kind of go back and I'll just like turn it down. And then just turn the scale down just so it's not like so crazy, crazy high. Uh, just because, again, I just find that it's unnecessary processing for my computer. But yeah. Now we're going to do our ambient occlusion. So we're going to grab a levels node, and we're going to take this blend from our height section, and we're going to plug that into the input. Then select your levels, take this black arrow on the top left and move it over about 1/6 of the way to the right. Or no, maybe about a quarter. Then take the bottom black handle and move it somewhere between 1/3 and halfway over to the right. Then take this top gray arrow and move it just a little bit over to the right. Then we're going to take this bottom white arrow and we're going to move it over just a little bit to the left. Now take a curve node and we're going to plug into the input this blend node that we have from our cushion section. The one that we have our shadows node plugged into. Now with our curve selected, we're just going to want to create a little handle by double clicking on this line here. And you're just going to want to pull it about 1/3 or so of the way down. And by using the handles and just playing around with it a little bit, you want to create a curve shape that looks sort of like this. Alright, so next we're going to grab a blend node, and for the foreground we're going to plug in this curve that we just made, and for the background it's going to be the levels. And actually, I think I might want to just pull this center arrow just a little bit to the left. Alright, so now for our blend, we're going to set the blending mode to multiply. And because I think I want the gradient here between the creases and this couch cushion to be a little bit smoother, I'm just going to make some adjustments, and I'm going to do that by double clicking on my levels node and then clicking just once on my curve node. That way I can make the adjustments in the curve while seeing on like the 2D viewer the action or the changes that are happening in the blend node. Alright, so that'll probably be good for now. There's going to be a button covering it anyway, so it doesn't really matter that much, but it's still kind of nice to do just in case there is anything like showing through. I also like to click through these just to see the changes that are being made, and also just to make sure everything's kind of moving in the direction I want to. So now we're going to add another blend node. And for the foreground, we're going to use this blend node that we use to mask out our button. And for the background, we're going to use this blend node here. And for the blend mode, we're going to choose screen. So now I'm going to search for AO, and I'm going to grab an ambient occlusion, HBAO. And now for the input, we're going to grab our histogram range from over here that we use to adjust our button tile. Then we're going to set the height depth to 0.7. And set the quality to 16. So then grab another blend node, and the foreground is going to be this blend from where we masked out our thread. And the background is going to be this ambient occlusion here. And our blending mode is going to be add linear dodge. Next, we're going to grab a shadows node. And the input is going to be our thread tile from over here. And for this one, we're going to set our shadow distance to 0.07. We're going to set the degree for the light angle to 94.68. And we're going to set the edge softness to 0.34. And it's just going to give us a soft kind of like shadowy edge around the whole thing. Now we're going to grab another blend node. So for the foreground, we're going to use this shadows. And the background is going to be this blend node that we have attached to our ambient occlusion. And we're going to set the blending mode to multiply. And now there's going to be another blend node. And our foreground is going to be our thread mask. So it's going to be this blend node over here. And our background is going to be this blend right here. And we're going to set the blending mode to add linear. Now we're going to add one more blend node. And the background is going to be this blend node that we just did. And the foreground is going to be this blend here that we have plugged into our shadows. And we're going to set the blending mode to multiply. Okay, so it should look a little bit like that. And just take this output from our blend and we can plug it into our ambient occlusion. Actually, I forgot, there is one more blend node. And we're going to use this blend node that we have up here that we also used for our height. And we're going to plug that into the foreground. And for the background, we're going to use this blend node here that we use to mask out our button and our thread. And we're going to set the blending mode to multiply. And then we're going to take this output and we're going to plug it into the background for our final blend node. So now we're going to work on our roughness. And I'm just going to search for a grunge map on the side here. And I'm going to choose this 001 grunge. And then I'm going to grab a uniform color, which is just this little red one up here with the paint bucket. And I'm going to make this grayscale. I'm just going to double click on this little black square here. And for the hex color code, just where this little hashtag is, I'm going to type in 2E, 2E, 2E. Then I'm going to grab a blend node. And for the foreground, I'm going to plug in this grunge map. And the background, I'm going to use this button tile. And that's going to be this blend node from up here. And I'm going to set the blending mode to overlay. And I'm going to set the opacity to 0.6. Next, it's going to be another blend node. And for the foreground, we're going to use this button mask here with the black background and the white buttons. And the background is going to be this uniform color. And I'm going to set the blending mode to divide. Then another blend node. And for the foreground, I'm going to plug in this first blend. And the background, I'm going to plug in this second blend. And I'm going to set the blend mode to soft light. Now, another blend node. And we're just going to grab this invert grayscale from where we made the leather texture from over here in the cushion section. And we're just going to use that for our foreground. And for the background, I'm going to use this uniform color. And I'm going to set the blend mode to add sub. Now it's going to be another blend node. And for our foreground, it's going to be this third blend that we just did here. And our background is going to be this last blend that we did. And then set the blending mode to min darken. And now we're going to take another blend node. And for our foreground, we're going to use this invert grayscale. And it's going to be this one here that we're using to mask out our button. And the background is going to be this last blend node that we did here. Then we're going to set our blending mode to multiply. And we're going to set the opacity to 0.23. Now we're going to take one last blend node. And for our foreground, we're going to plug in this black and white thread mask from this blend here. And the background is going to be this last blend node here. And just set the mode to add linear. And before we plug it in, we're just going to need to double click on our base material, and we're going to need to turn on our roughness and our metal. So now you can just take the output from this blend and you can plug it into your roughness. Then also take your output from your base material and just plug it into your roughness here. That way it'll show up in your 3D viewer. If you want, you can also right click on your base material and then you can just select show in 3D viewer. And just doing a bit of house cleaning. Alright, and now we're going to do our metallic. Grab a levels node. And for the input, we're going to use our levels from over here where we made the cushion. So I'm just going to take this white handle here on the top right, and I'm just going to push it all the way to the left, to about here. Then I'm going to take this black arrow and I'm just going to push it over to the right. Then I'm going to take this white arrow on the bottom right, and I'm just going to push it over to the left about a quarter of the way or so. Then I'm going to take this bottom black arrow on the left, and I'm just going to push it all the way over to the right so that it's just touching the white arrow. So now take a blend node. And for the foreground, we're just going to use this blend node with our button mask. And the background is going to be this levels. And the blending mode is going to be add linear dodge. And I'm going to take one more blend node. The foreground is going to be this invert grayscale from my thread mask. And the background is going to be this blend node. Then set the blend mode to multiply. And so we could just highlight that and add frame. And I'm going to call this metal. Then I can just take this output from my last blend node and plug it into my metallic on my base material. And then take the output and plug it into our metallic. And actually, I feel like this metallic is just a little bit too high. So I'm going to go over to my levels over here in my metallic section. And I just want to make the value of this gray a little bit darker. And so I'm going to do that by pulling these two arrows on the bottom right hand side, and I'm just going to pull them over a little bit to the left until it's just a little bit of a darker shade. Oh, and important. I just realized here that this blend node here, we only have it set to copy. So it's not actually blending in any of the information that we have from up here. So just double click it and make sure you set the blend mode to soft light. So all we have left now to do is add a bit of color. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to want to grab a gradient map. Actually, I'm just going to grab and use this one that we have already plugged in. But I'm going to redirect this input to our, where is it? Our ambient occlusion, our levels, our first levels here. Okay. So I'm just going to open up this gradient editor here. And I'm going to double click just so we end up with these little like handles on the side of our gradient editor. Let's see. Nope, wrong side. Okay. So probably gonna start, I'm gonna start off with that because I think I want my cushion to be kind of like maybe like a brownish, reddish black color. Yeah, start with that. Okay. Then I'm gonna grab another gradient map. There we go. And I'm going to, let's move that up a bit. And I'm going to plug in this levels from our cushion. So this is going to be like our kind of leather texture. And this is where I'm just going to add in the variations of colors between these different parts here. So back to our gradient editor. I'm going to raise this up here. Okay, then I'm going to grab a histogram scan. And I'm also going to have that plugged into my levels from my cushion, from the leather texture. Okay. And I'm going to set the position to 0.62. And I'm going to set the contrast to 0.42. There we go. Just so we end up with these little, like, I guess, like highlights to where, like, the most raised areas of the leather would be. Alright, so now I'm going to grab another gradient map. I'm going to have the histogram scan plug into the input there. On the gradient map, I'm going to click our gradient editor. And I think I'm actually going to switch these sides around. There we go. Why not? Let's see how that works. If we hate it, we can always change it. And then we're going to grab a blend node. And first we're going to blend our gradient maps together, our first two gradient maps. So I believe that one's going to go in the foreground. And this one's going to go in the background. And just so we can like see what we're doing, I'm just going to plug in our new gradient into our base color. And we can actually kind of start to see what's going to be happening on the surface of our texture. So then I'm going to set this blend mode here to screen. And then also, it's kind of fun sometimes to just go through these different ones here just to see, you know, how they're gonna look. I'm gonna go with overlay for now. Then I'm going to take another blend node, the foreground. I'm going to plug in this gradient map here. And the background is going to be our last blend node that we did. Then I'm going to set that to multiply. Does that look different at all? Oh, right, we don't have it plugged in. Okay. It's not really making much of a difference. All right, let's go back to our gradient map and let's maybe change the color. And I'm just going to play around with these colors for a bit until I find something that that I like. Okay, I think that'll do for now. So now I'm going to grab a Blur HQ Grayscale. And I'm going to have the input be my invert grayscale from my button mask all the way over here. So I'm going to be using this one here with the white background and the black buttons. And I'm just going to pull that up and plug that into the back. And I'm going to set the intensity to 16 or 0.16. And I'm going to set the quality up to 1. There we go. Now I'm going to grab another gradient map. And I'm going to just plug that into the back here. And for this gradient map, I'm going to put my gradient editor, click the edge of it so my little arrow thingy show up, and I'm just going to hit invert positions. And then I'm going to grab my black arrow, and I'm just going to pull it to just about over halfway, like that. Then I'm going to grab a blend node. And for the foreground, I'm going to plug in my gradient map. And for the background, I'm going to plug in my, my last blend node. Plug that into the back. And then for my blending mode, I'm going to choose Add Linear Dodge. There we go. It should be the same, but just with our buttons masked out. Then next, I'm going to grab another gradient map. For my input, I'm going to... Oh, right. It's going to be this one over here. So our blending for our button tile. And I'm just going to pull that up. Plug that into the back. Oops, here, let's just pull that up a little bit, I guess. And then here, we're just going to add some color to our button. So, because my leather is kind of more of like a warm brownish color, I'm not too sure whether or not I want to make this like more of a silver, metallic, or a the more golden metallic. And really, like, you could make this any color that you want. It's up to you. You could make it, you know, hot pink if you wanted to. Depending on how far you have this other color, it's going to kind of like push that the color or like the black mask a little bit, but you'll find like as you layer the colors on top of the masks, it'll kind of give you an idea for how far you want this to be pushed. Sometimes it doesn't really matter, but sometimes it does. Okay, so I don't want my buttons to be pink, so I'm going to make this. I think I kind of want this to be. I don't know, actually, it's kind of hard to tell. Maybe more of like a cool gray. Okay. We'll do that for now. Then I'm gonna want to, and then you could just like keep adding the different layers of color like as you want. And you'll see like as you kind of push these in different directions, it's going to distribute the color a little bit differently, and it's like entirely up to you how you want that to look. Okay. Let's just stick with that for now, I guess. Maybe I want to warm this up a little bit. Yeah, let's just go with that for now. We'll see how that looks. Okay. So then we're going to want to grab another blend node, and we're going to plug in, I believe this one's going to go on the background, and then our gradient map is going to go on the top. And we're going to make this multiply. My bad. So actually what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take our gradient map here that we have plugged into this blend node that we're using to mask out the buttons, and double click it, and just open up your gradient editor and pull your this black handle all the way to the right, and then hit invert positions. So they actually, the colors need to be reversed. Okay. And then up here in the blend node where it's plugged into, we're actually going to want to make the blending mode multiply. Then in the blending node that one is plugged into, that we have like our button colors applied to, we're going to want to make that add linear dodge. There we go. So now we have our buttons properly masked out, and then we have our color applied to the surface of them. Then we can just take the output here, and then we can plug it into our base color. So we can kind of start to see what those colors and those buttons are going to look like. Yeah, I think it's okay. I think it's a little bit washed out, but maybe I'll go back and play with them later. Okay, so next, we're almost there. We're going to want to grab a gradient mask. Yes, another gradient map. And we're going to take the input, and we want the input to be our thread mask. So it'll be our inverted grayscale that's plugged into our thread mask. So we'll just grab that, and we're going to plug it into our input. Then we're going to grab a blend, And we're going to, for the foreground, we're going to plug in our gradient map. And for the background, we're going to plug in our blend node. And then we're going to make this one multiply. There we go. So now we can see our thread is masked out. And we're going to do the same thing that we did with the button. So we're just going to grab a gradient map. And for our input, we're going to want it to be our thread tile. So that's going to be down, I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this one here. So just grab the output from our blend down in our thread tile. And just pull it up and plug it into our gradient map here. Then we're going to want to color this. So open up your gradient editor and just choose some colors. And again, just make sure that you have your like your black all the way here to the left, just to make sure that you keep everything masked out. All right, I'm not too sure how that's going to look. It might look really gross and weird with the greens in there, but we will see. Okay, so we're going to grab another blend node. And in the foreground, we're going to plug in our gradient map. Oops. And in the background, we're going to plug in this blend that we did here. And we're going to make this add linear dodge. There we go. Okay, cool. So now we're just going to plug that into our base color. How does that look? Looks okay. Surprisingly not as weird as I thought it would. Just out of curiosity, I just want to see how this color is going to look on my button. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, right. And then we'll plug my button in there, so that looks... Oh, did I confuse it? I think I did. Oh, right, duh. I kind of like that. And where's our thread plugged into? Down here, I think it was this one. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. It is... Is it that one or that one? Oh, is this one? Yeah. Oh, I see, because the colors are all weird and stuff. Okay. Well, either way, I'm going to switch these around. Plug that there. Ugh, it's a little bit, actually a little bit too neon, I think. Oh, okay. I mean, I kind of don't hate it. Let's see. Let's maybe change our thread a little bit. Oh no. See, I could get lost doing this for like a long time because I don't always know what the best colors are. But I don't know. I think I'm going to stick with that. You can do, you know, whatever colors you like, obviously. One thing you can do if you want to just like add a little bit more, I guess, like interest or, yeah, just add a little bit more variation in color, like, you know, like how we have these kind of roughness splotches on our button. You can add like some layers of color to that to kind of give the dirt or the grime, you know, maybe a certain kind of color. Like maybe it's some kind of like oxidization, or maybe it's just random built-up crud. Who knows? So you can do that by just grabbing your blend node here that you have in your roughness section that you have hooked up to your grunge map. Just grab a gradient map. Oops. Grab a gradient map. Here we go. And then just plug that into the back of it there. And then just bring it up to your, you know, where all your color stuff is. And let's see. Maybe we want to put it before. Actually, what we can do is we can blend these two together. So plug in your gradient map that you have like without the, you know, the dirt smudges. Plug that into the background and then plug in the dirt, the dirty buttons, I guess, to the foreground. And just go, and then you can plug that into your blend node that you have the colored buttons, and just plug that into the back there. So now they're like, you know, they've lost their color, but just go to blend mode, and I believe add or maybe multiply might be good. Yeah, multiply works. You can also just go through these and see whichever one you like best. I don't think, doesn't look like min darken really does much of anything. Let's see. Overlay. Overlay looks alright. Screen looks kind of interesting. You can also like change the opacity. So if you just want like a little bit, like so, but here I just want to go through all of them just to see what they're gonna look like. Soft light looks okay. That actually looks really similar to, nope, wrong one. Okay, I think soft light's kind of cool. So I'm gonna turn the opacity down just a bit, just because I don't want it to be that dramatic. I'm gonna put it to 0.25. Okay, so then over here in our gradient map, we can open up our gradient editor. So I'm going to hit invert positions to see what that does. Okay, huh. No, okay, I'm going to leave it like that. And so I'm just going to make another, you know, handle thing. And you can kind of start to see the color changing. What does that do? Invert color? Nah. And then it could go back to my blend node, and then again just like play with the different blending modes and just see how they look. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Let's just go with that for now. All right, and then again, if you like, you can add in like another layer of like, you know, a color noise pattern into your leather, just to kind of give it a little bit more, again, like a little bit more complexity, make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to type in noise, and I think I'm going to choose a Perlin noise. So I'm just going to search for, there we are. Here we go. So we're just going to choose this Perlin noise, and I'm going to grab a gradient map, plug that in, and something kind of cool that you can do in Substance Designer is you can actually, if you pull up your gradient editor, and if you hit click gradient here, it'll actually allow you to sample colors from pretty much anything on your monitor. So I went into Google and I searched for some cool rocks. So let's see. I think I'm going to grab, I don't know, maybe like this rock here. So I'll hit, oops, pick gradient. Where'd my cool rocks go? Boom. And I'm just going to go slide across this rock here. There we go. Awesome. So close that. I'm going to reopen. And okay, so now I have this gradient. I have no idea how this is going to look on top of my texture. I might hate it, but we're just gonna try it. See how it looks. So I'm gonna stick. Oops, I'm gonna stick between these two blends here right before I start blending or overlaying my button mask. So I'm gonna grab a blend node. And I'm going to grab my gradient map from my Perlin noise, and I'm going to plug it into the foreground. And then I'm going to grab my blend node right before I start masking in my buttons, and I'm going to plug that into my background. Then I'm going to do what I was doing before, and I'm just going to go through the different blending modes to see if anything looks interesting, or I feel like might work with what I'm doing. And actually, I feel like the Perlin noise here is just a little bit too big. I feel like the pattern looks almost like stains, which I don't like. I want it to blend in a little bit more with the natural kind of grain of the leather. So I'm just going to click my Perlin noise, and I'm going to change the scale. So I'm going to raise it up, 64. I think I'm going to raise it. I'm going to try all the way to 150. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. Pull it up a bit more. Okay, so about 200. And then I can also change the disorder as well. Although at this scale, it's kind of hard to even see it. Oops, where'd we go? Okay. Okay, so... Alright, so let's go through these. So overlay, screen, soft light. Actually, maybe even make that a bit smaller. Yeah, 284. And change the disorder. Okay. Sure. Oh, yeah, and I changed the disorder to about 0.85 there. Okay, so now we're at soft light. Oh, that's the bottom. So I'm just going to work my way up again. I think overlay looks okay. Let's min darken. Okay, I'm going to go with overlay and see how that looks. Okay, and then I'm just going to plug that into my background here, where I just right underneath where I'm plugging in the where I'm masking out the buttons. Okay, did that make any difference? Let's see, Control Z. Wow, not really, eh? Huh. Well, yeah, I don't know. Okay, here, let's change the blend mode now that we can actually see it on our 3D model. Okay, yeah, so it is. This change was just a little too subtle. So that was overlay. Oh, start from the bottom, soft light. Okay, yeah, so we can start seeing like a bit of a difference. And I can also change the opacity if I want it to be, you know, just like ever so subtle. Or I could just keep going up, soft light, overlay. Okay, I think that works. It's a subtle difference, but I think it does actually, you know, it adds a little something to it. Okay, so then, of course, importantly, we want to just keep everything together because you never know when you're going to need to come back to something that you made and, I don't know, use it for something or just, I don't know, just know what you're doing. Okay, so add frame, and I'm going to call this base color. And there it is. Thanks so much for sticking around to the end. I really hope you got something out of this. If you have any questions or there was anything that wasn't clear, feel free to let me know down in the comments. This is my first time making one of these, so all and any feedback is appreciated. And yeah, have a good one.